Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm working on a Daiwa AG7000X. It's a saltwater reel. It's in pretty decent shape. I picked this up at a resale shop recently. Gonna service it today, get the old grease out, give it a clean, inspect all the parts and everything. As you can see, the decals are kind of worn. It's definitely got signs of wear. I couldn't find any real information on this to figure out what year it is. My best guess is somewhere 80s, mid 90s, somewhere, something like that. All right, let's get started on this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by taking the handle off. That nut on this side spins off here. Then the handle will slide out. You can reverse this handle to a left or right hand. Just stick that back on there so don't lose it. I like to use parts trees here, so I'm going to get them out now. I like to try to use one for the internal parts, one for the external parts. That way they don't get mixed up. Alright, next we're going to take the bail off. The spool. You start that by spinning this drag loose. It's kind of noisy, but that's the way it is. A little more here. Okay, take the drag knob off, and then the spool just pulls right directly off. Well, this reel's pretty clean under here. Okay, this one here, the gear in that washer, you don't want to lose that washer. It's a spacer, so the spool rides correctly on the shaft, and the clicker for the spool ride on the clicker gear here. I'm going to stick that in my parts bin. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these cover screws out. You want to try to use the right size driver so you don't mess the screws up. This one has 4 of them. Pull all 4 of those out. We'll stick them in the parts tray. Parts trays are handy because it keeps all your stuff together and prevents them from getting lost. And then when you start reassembling, you have them all in groups. What parts work together, internal parts, external parts, and such. It's the way I like to do it. And get this screw off right here. We'll stick that there. Okay, now this side cover just lifts off gently. I try to take it off without pulling the main drive gear and shaft. So there we are, and the cover's off. Cover looks in pretty good shape here. Alright, now what we want to do here is we lift that off there. That's the eccentric, that's what raises the spool up and down while you're spooling in to level out the line. So this will just come up off of here. Come on. And break that down around that side. It may help. There we go. Now it's lifting up. Will this pin come out of this one? Nope. That pin does not come out. It should lift up off of here. I'm not sure why it's not. There we go. Now we're getting in. It was having binding up on that little shaft. So I'll pull that off. We'll set that in our parts tray. Okay, now we want to turn this back so we can access the screw, I believe, that holds that shaft in for the spool rides on. A screw right here. So we take that little screw out. And that'll end up over in the parts tray also. Stick that right over there. Now we can come up here, grab this, and gently pull it out. We'll put that in our parts tray. Now we'll grab the main gear, raise it out. This one has a bushing on the end here. We want to be careful that that's got to go back in, that supports the shaft. And the other bushing for this side is still in the side cover, so I don't have to worry too much about that one. Now we're going to lift this eccentric drive piece off of here. This was on this shaft. This shaft comes in, there's a flat spot and a round. You want the flat up. This will go right in there, and then the screw goes back in it when you're during reassembly. Okay, now we're going to take the rotor off. What you do to get this off is right down in here, there's this metal clip here. This is a non-ball bearing reel. It's all nylon bushing. What you do is you pull that piece out. You don't want to be careful not to lose it. Put that in the parts bin. Now this drive gear will come off with the rotor, just like that. This down here, this is for the anti-reverse here. This is the bail trigger release. I'm going to set this off to the side. Here we have our main body. This is your anti-reverse mechanism here, operated by the lever. This is in pretty good shape, so I'm not going to tear that apart. These springs can be kind of a pain to get back into place, so I'm going to leave that on there like that. I like to put it in the reverse position so that this is farther away from the drive gear that's on the back here. That makes it easier for reassembling the rotor, so I put it right there in reverse. That moves this away. This has a brass bushing down in here for that front shaft that's in the rotor to ride on. Alright, so now what we're going to do is get some of this old grease out of here. We'll re-lubricate it. This will also come out. You have this piece here. There is a spring down in here. If you push down, that spring is what holds this shaft in. If you push down on that spring, it will come off the ledge. There's a like a ledge right here that keeps it from sliding, this shaft from sliding out of the body. If you push down on that spring, then and get the spring off that ledge, then that shaft will slide out. I can demonstrate that here. So get down in there, push that down, and now I should be able to wiggle that out. Can be a little bit difficult, that's why I like to leave these together. Grab me another tool here. We'll take the screwdriver, we'll push the spring down, we'll wiggle that shaft, and there it is. See, this shaft slides right out of the back of the body. A little piece of something on there. Alright, so let's clean this up. I like to use paper towel. Works good for getting a lot of the larger areas of grease out. I'm going to pull that spring out for that anti-reverse lever right now so it does not get lost, because it will drop and hit the floor. So we'll take that out, we'll set it in the parts tray. I also like to use Q-tips for the harder to reach areas. Works well. So I'll take and wipe this all off, get all that over. You just notice this shim here. This is behind the rotor. You don't want to lose that. I thought it was stuck to the rotor, but it didn't. That'll have to go back on before reinstalling the rotor. See here now, I wasn't paying attention and I popped that spring loose on this anti-reverse lever. So this, okay. Now what this is that is for the anti-reverse. That spring needs to be on that side so that flat moves around like that. Alright, now I'm going to stick that shaft back in so I can keep that in place. That won't hinder cleaning it out. So first we need to stick this spring back in. This spring, if you notice, has a small hole on this side, and this side is more narrow. This side is a larger, and it is a little bit wider in that area. This side goes down. There's a pin that this will sit on down in here. It's a little bit difficult to get it in there. So let's get that down into place. See, now it's down there on that little pin. I don't know if you can see that pin down in there, but right on that. Now what I'll do is I'm going to slide this into here and then push it down into that hole and push it a little bit more, get it lined right up into that hole. You want this sticking down because that's where the orientation of it is. Once you get it started in that hole, make sure you hold up on this so that can come through. As you go through, you just wiggle it back and forth, and that spring that holds it into place that I just stuck in will end up right there, which will put pressure on the shaft to hold it in the reverse or forward position, and it will also prevent it from coming back out. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll work it through, and there it is. You heard the click there. So now that's back in place, and that works again. So now I'm going to clean this old grease out of here. I like to use Q-tips so I can get right down in there. Take that out. I get this down on this side, down in here. Get as much of that old stuff out as you can. The older grease will end up getting hard and then end up getting into the gears and causing problems down the road if you don't get it out. You want to try to get as much of that out as you can. Like I say, Q-tips work real good. Paper towel works real good. I don't use heavy cleaners, anything like that that might damage the body or the paint. You don't really need to. It comes out pretty easily, so get that all off there. Go down here with that bushing rides, clean that out. And I'll come back up around here, clean this grease out of this bushing that's up here. Clean this off. If this was a really nasty reel, I'd take it apart so I get, there's a lot of times there's dirt up in here and everything, but this one's pretty clean. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. But let's see there. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent. Got all the grease out of there. So now we'll get lubricant, re-lubricate it, and start reassembly. I like to use this grease here. It's called Super Lube. It's a multi-purpose synthetic grease. It is for saltwater use, food grade use, that kind of thing. It works very well. I've used it for a long time without any issues. It just works. It does not get thick in cold weather, so if you cold weather fish, your reel is not going to get all jammed up with thick grease and all that. So this really works good. I normally like to clean my reels out every season, re-grease them and everything. That keeps them working good and everything, and I can look for damaged components and that type of thing. So now I get a little bit of the grease on here. This right here, this shaft is where that eccentric drive piece rides that goes on the end of the axle for the spools. So you like to get a little grease down into there to keep that well lubricated. And right up into here where the top piece rides, right up along there, there's a groove right up, well, this here, but this flat part and this flat part right on these higher parts, this piece rides down into that groove. So you want to make sure you get it lubricated good. You know, we can set that in place right there like that. And I remember from the tearing it apart, this is, you got it, this was orientated up here. You want to take pictures, which I didn't do this time, so fairly familiar with this reel. But take pictures of everything. That way you got a reference to go back. If you happen to get distracted, walk away and come back, or you get a phone call or what, you might forget where things go. I do it all the time. That way it just help you to keep from having issues. So, okay, now that's all back together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our bail here, or our spool. Geez, oh, piece of rotor, sorry. This is really good shape. I'll get this old grease off of here, lubricate it up again, and we'll get this piece on here. Normally I like to clean as I go when I'm tearing apart, but this time I kind of got away from that and didn't do it. And now we'll get us, look at that piece of whatever off there. And it's nice and firm on there. It's not slipping or anything. So now we'll get some lubricant on there. You don't need to over grease them either. Just, I like to put grease down into these gears, and then any wear contact point, like the end of this shaft, right up here where this bushing rides. So we'll get some right up in here. We'll put a layer there. We'll put some here. Now what I'm going to do too, put a little bit more on that inner bushing. You don't need a real lot because it's just going to push out if you put too much. But get up in here, coat that bushing. There we go. It's that simple. So now we have this in the reverse position, which removes that away from there, so it's not going to contact the reverse lock wheel. So now we'll get this stuck back in here. And this just slides right onto there like that, see? That gear popped back through. So now I'm going to take and get the clip back in there that holds that all in place, and the rotor won't fall off. There we go. Just got to get it in the right position, but it just snaps down into there. Pretty simple. No, not quite wondered. Whoops. Get that right up into there. There's a groove behind that gear that it rides in to keep the rotor from coming off. There we go. When it's in correctly, it will be flush right here with the body case. The rotor will spin nice and free. It works well. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that shaft back in, because this one here, the drive gear, doesn't have any pieces here that interfere with that shaft. Because some of these reels you need to take this shaft out in order to get this out. A lot of times I'll have a gear down here that actually drives that centric instead of this here. So what we'll do is we'll leave this piece out for a minute, and we'll grab the shaft. Now let's wipe this shaft off and get it re-lubricated. It's piece of paper towel. The shaft's in pretty good shape. You can see a little wear along here, but nothing major. You can't even feel it. But normally what I would do is, if this had rust or corrosion pitting, I would take a piece of fine emery cloth, super fine steel wool, even them green scratchies from your kitchen sink will work. Remove that tarnish and rust so that that's nice and smooth and slides real well, because this oscillates back and forth like that while it is in your reeling in. Or so let's get a little bit of grease onto this shaft. Again, you don't have to over grease it, because it's going to push up as you go. So I like to grease toward the bottom. There we go. And then that'll all push up and into that bushing, or into that drive gear. I also like to put a little bit down into here, just to Okay, so now we'll slide this in through here. It comes out the back side. And push it. Okay, now you want to get it into that. Hold on a second. Oh, I had this in wrong actually. See, this is the end that shaft goes in. I had it this way. It actually goes like this. My fault. So stick that back into that groove, that square piece, and then the shaft slides right into place. You line that screw up, grab the screw and stick it back in there, and that'll be assembled. Oh, I almost made a mistake. We gotta back up a step. Just realized I didn't put that spacer or shim washer in behind that. We don't want to forget that. Let's take it back apart here, real simple. This is that shim washer, spacer washer. And that'll ride right down in that little groove there. That helps take up space and slop in the reel. Okay, we stick that back on. We grab this clip back here. And we'll get it back into place down in there. Got to make sure it gets in right. So, like I said, that needs to be flush with the rest of the body. And it's right in line. So that's in good. Now we can stick our shaft back in. Kind of wiggle it around to get it in there. Right there, the screw hole is lined up. Get our screw. You don't need to over tighten these screws, just snug. Helps get them back apart so you don't strip them. I mean, it's not real lot of pressure on it or anything. You just want it snug. That'll be fine. You don't need any kind of lock, thread lock, anything like that. That's working well, that part. So now we can work on getting the main drive gear back in here. Now what I'm going to do is pull this bushing off, try to get back down into the body, which is real simple. It fits right down in there nice. Get a little grease on here for that. I like to put grease on these gears. This gear's full of grease, and I like to get this one mostly full too. This one reel is real clean, like I said. If this was full of hard dried up grease, dirt and such, I would use a plastic brush or toothbrush, something like that, to sweep it all out. But I didn't have to on this one. I've had some of these where the grease was so dried up you could not even turn the handle. It was locked right up. And some people throw them away because they think they're garbage. All you gotta do is tear it apart, clean that grease out, and so let's get this greased up good. Okay, I got that teeth all pretty much full of grease. Now this goes in this way. Let's drop that. This eccentric drive is up here. That piece I took off first, so let's slide this back down in here, and that will mesh with the gear that runs the rotor. See how that works? Okay, now I'll grab this guy here. This one here is asymmetrical. It is even on both sides and everything. There's no difference. It don't matter what direction this goes in. Some of these you want to be careful of. Some of them have this would be on an angle. It might be offset to one side or the other, and you need to know the orientation of that. So when you reassemble it, you get that in there right so that everything works properly. That can cause some headaches if you don't either get a picture of it or don't remember which way it goes, if this is not, if this is offset or angled or anything. So I get a little bit of grease. You don't need a real lot, like I said. Just want to grease this up right where it rides, right on that eccentric there. I grease the shaft just a little bit. Now we'll slide that into place. Get over here, and I start it onto the shaft side first, and then just kind of work it down into place. And there we go, it's back into place. Okay, now I'm going to put the side cover on so none of those pieces fall out while I finish with the putting the spool and everything on. A lot of times also I will take this bail all apart and clean and lubricate it, but this one is working really well. It's nice, it's smooth, no binding anything, so rather than fight the springs and stuff in there, I'm not going to tear this apart. I may pull this off so I can get a little bit of oil down in there, but I'm not going to pull this all apart. But what you would do is pull this screw out. That will come off. There is a roller right here. You lubricate. And then when you pull this screw, this plate comes off along with the bail. And then you will also, you pull this screw, pull this metal plate out. And then you can access the spring that's down in there and unhook that. Pull this screw, and then this arm comes off, and then you can clean everything and lube it. Like I say, this one's working really well. I don't feel any kind of binding or anything, so I'm not going to disassemble that completely, but I may pull this screw so I can get a little oil down in there and make sure everything looks good. Okay, let's stick this side plate back on. We'll get a little bit of lubrication into that bushing there. I also like to put a little bit here because this kind of will be against it a little bit, so make sure to oil that up pretty good. Nah, don't need a lot of heavy grease. Oh, I just noticed that there's one of those shims there to keep that main gear centered, so let's take that off. We'll put it right on the shaft to make it a little easier to get this back together. That piece also will hold this eccentric arm onto the eccentric. You can kind of see it overlaps right on the top here, so that doesn't push off, and that rides against that body there to it'll actually help keep this away from it a little bit. Now we'll snap this back into place like so, and we'll put the 4 screws back in. Like I said, you don't need to over tighten these things. This is a graphite body, it's non-metal. You don't want to strip out the holes, you don't want to strip the screws out, and if you over tighten them, it's just a hassle to get it back apart too. There's no reason to over tighten them, just snug them a little bit. Snug them enough they're not going to come loose, and then you won't have to worry about it. Let's put this down into here. Tighten the screw. Get that one and that one in place. This is a pretty simple reel to be able to disassemble and get back together without too much trouble. Some of these reels can get quite complicated, so like I say, you want to definitely take pictures, that way you don't get yourself in a bind where you don't know where something went. So let's take this side cover off here and kind of show you what's down in here also. You pop that screw out, and it goes in the parts bin. Grab a pick, and I like to go right in here where the screw is and try to grab that. Now it just slides straight down. That simple. So like this here, there's an arm in here. Right here. You want to lubricate that. Here's your spring. Those springs can be a bear, like I said, to get them hooked back up into place sometimes. So let's get some lubrication in here. This is really clean up in here. We'll get this lubricated. I like to use a little bit of 3-in-1 oil. I've used it pretty much my entire life for a lot of things, and it works really well. So let's I like to lubricate this shaft area a little bit. That spring, don't hurt that spring a bit. And up into there where that shaft rides, I'll even put a little over here, let it soak down in there. Now, I'm going to reassemble this. This place there is a groove here on either side that this fits down into. You can kind of see it right there. And then this will slide back up into place right there. You'll grab the screw and stick that back into there. Now if that was all full of dirt and nastiness, I would have definitely taken it apart. But it was nice and clean, so I didn't see a reason to bother. And snug that up and it's back together. The bail's working good. Okay, now up here, let's look at the spool here. There's a little arm here. This is the clicker for when a fish or whatever pulls the drag. Yeah, this is the clicker noise. So I like to, a little bit of lubricant on that, a little bit on the spring. Helps keep from wearing things out. Keeps them moving nice and free. And right over here, where did that, there, okay. All right, now let's put the drag clicker ring back in here. There's also has a D-shaped hole to match the shaft. The shaft has a flat on this side and round back here. So the flat and the D-shaped hole is going to go right under there. Another thing is too, this gear clicker is pretty much flat, even everything. So not real important, but you can kind of see it's beveled a little bit. That bevel will go up. The flat side will be down when you put it in there. So that'll go here like that. And then we'll slip this little spacer washer back onto here. That's that. What this spacer washer also does, oops, line is going up. There we go. Had to push it a little bit. That aligns this clicker onto the clicker gear here. That helps do that. Because if without that, then the gear would set below that little clicker arm and it wouldn't do anything. So with that spacer, it raises the spool up off the gear just enough that that clicker arm catches. Now what we want to do, this is a removable drag washer, so we'll pop this spring out. You gotta be careful, these will go flying. I've lost a few of them already. I'm getting my tools all in the way now. So I get that out of the groove. There's a groove in there it sits down into. I grab the pliers and pull it out. Stick that in my first tray. Pay attention to the disassembly here because there's a certain order that these washers and the metal and fiber washers go back in so the drag will work properly. So I usually try to get them out one at a time. Now this has a rectangle square or slot here that rides on that shaft. This is the top washer, so I'm going to put it down in the order they come out. Let's drop that guy. The next we got, okay, we have 3 that come out that time. You see, you have a fiber, and then you have this one that has these arms or teeth that fit into the grooves right here. You can see those couple of grooves, and those little teeth fit down into there. And then you have another fiber. So it's a fiber on each side. This was setting so that those were facing down. This is flipped over. That was the top washer. So I'm going to flip this, lay it on top, and then I'll pull the bottom out. Or the center. This one also has a rectangle hole in it that locks it to that shaft so that the drag works properly. No ears or anything on there that fit into there. So I'm going to drop that on top of that stack of fiber, steel and fiber. Now down here in the bottom of it, we have one more fiber washer. So we'll get that guy pulled out. There he is. He's in pretty good shape, pretty clean and all. I'll set that right on top of my stack. This has got a little bit of grime in there. I'm going to get that cleaned out of there, and then we'll reassemble that drag assembly. I'll get this grime cleaned out of here. I apologize if this is going out of frame. This is pretty much my first video I'm doing on this. Kind of learning as I go. I'm using my camera, which doesn't have a real wide angle, and I'm trying to keep it down low where you can see the real good and not the rest of my garbage. Okay, that's pretty well cleaned out. I like to put just a little bit, just a drop of oil down in there on that and kind of work it around a little bit. And I'll drop in the fiber. This was the very bottom fiber. Then we had that metal with the rectangle. Let's drop that in there. Another fiber. The center metal washer that had the little ears on it, then fit into that groove like I said. So kind of line them up and grab a pick and kind of work it around to get them in there. Now it drops into place. Now we put our last fiber washer there. And then we'll put this top plate on. Okay, we'll get it that way. Now this spring, this is a spring wire. You want to be careful when you're putting this in because it will go flying, as I mentioned. So I usually start it down in there at the bottom. Gonna be hard to see with my hands in the way, I know. I'll hold it with that finger and I'll grab my pliers. Grab it here and kind of twist it and bring it down. Once I get it down into there, I'll kind of push it down, and then I'll take a screwdriver or a pick and work it down into the groove. So you just heard it snap into where it goes. And I check it all the way around. You can see it's down into that groove. It's not going to come back out on its own. Now this here, I don't worry too much about lining those up because there's no pressure on the drag. So you can rotate it on the shaft as you assemble it, because we had one of those rectangle holes in the bottom, the center, and the top. So you'll need to slide it on there, get the lower one lined up first, and then twist it to get the center and the top. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Remember, we got all this in here. We get this lubricated, so now we're going to put it onto the shaft. Now there, oh, that slid right into place. How you like that? And the top one's not, but if I rotate it, fall right on. Now we'll put our drag nut back on, or knob, whichever you want to call it. Okay, keep tightening. We'll get her there. See, now it's getting... Wipe it all down real good. Clean paper towels. Get all that lubricant off there. There, that way nice and clean, not all slippery. Okay. Alright, let's put the handle back on. The handle. I like to put a little bit of lube down on some of these pieces, help them function better. Put just a drop or two there, put a little bit down there, move that around, get it free. Make sure it's all good and free. I like to a little bit here. These handles like to squeak just a little bit, so put a drop down into there. And there we go. Nice and quiet. Clean that all back off. It'll leak out a little bit of oil, but it'll be alright. Alright, we're setting this back up for left hand retrieve. I'll just slide into there. And spin the nut on. It's that simple. You don't need to over tighten it like any of the stuff. You don't really want to over tighten it, end up stripping or breaking pieces. So, alright. Drag seems to be working just fine. I like to leave my drags loose until I'm using them. There we go. Working good. Alright, this one's pretty much ready to go out fishing. Just need to stick it on a rod. Alright, thanks for watching this video, everybody. If you like what you've seen, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. This is actually my first video. I'm just starting into this, so I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for watching.